All right, folks, welcome on into another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones in a new location today. Carl, how are we doing on this Thursday afternoon?
Doing better. You know, I'm happy to be to have a new spot and all, but it was definitely tedious getting over here and have electricity the first couple of days. RG&E and I have not been seeing eye to eye, but things are rectified now. Can't fix the past, and here I am. New location, in the Park neighborhood. So we chilling now. I feel good.
Yeah, you got the electricity, very important. Almost even more important. Clearly, we have the internet, which is always in my experiences, I moved a handful of times over the years. The toughest part is getting that internet hooked up. Usually always an adventure.
Yeah, man, that was annoying too because I had everything plugged in. It says you got a 3 bars. Like, okay, that's cool, but like, why is it not connect? Why can I get no service? Thankfully, their customer service is a lot easier to handle than RG&E's. I didn't have like 10,000. I didn't have to wait for 10,000 hours like I did with that company. But I got the situation rectified, and we all good. Smooth sailing, baby.
Yeah. My experiences, they were not very pleasant last time. I tried to get set up. I was getting one, what is it, megabyte, millibyte, whatever, up and down. It was rough. Then now my internet is still under the wrong person's name. Somehow I'm in as Thomas Fieldman, which I have tried to correct before, but I just have not successfully been able to get that because apparently it's a big hassle to do that. So I've just rolled with it. I'm still paying my bills. It's just Thomas Fieldman's, I guess, cashing the checks.
Thomas, I don't know where we getting AJ. Okay, we'll let that.
I don't know if there was an old Thomas Fieldman or whatever, yada yada. But at this point, it's it's still working, so we're not complaining. But glad to see you're all in one piece. We had an interesting week of high school football this past week. We talked about it a little bit last week. We've got a referee shortage here in Section 5, as well as everywhere across the country. Be nice to your ref folks. But there's not as many referees as we'd like to have this year. So there are a lot of teams, a lot of games are going to be played on Thursdays this year. A small handful, some additional more on Saturday. This is also just because, every team has been putting in turf. Every team's been putting in lights. So everybody wants to play on Friday night. Sometimes they're playing on Thursday night now. So last week we had 4 games featuring Class A teams getting in action. We also had some more on Saturday. So the huddle on Friday was a little bit more interesting. We got a little bit out of our comfort zones a little bit. But the one thing that really stood out for both of us, definitely, we weren't able to actually be at this game, but we did get the highlights up thanks to our friends over at McQuaid. The reign of terror of the UPrep Griffins continues here in Section 5. They beat the defending 3-time sectional champs from McQuaid 36-30. They got up big. McQuaid lost their quarterback, but eventually they did come back a little bit to make it 36-30. But UPrep, we were wondering how they were going to deal with this adjustment into Class AA. We noted right away they got, big, strong test right away. So far, test 1, test 2, passing with flying colors.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I went to a soccer game last night, and someone walked up to me like, yeah, so who has impressed you so far? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen some teams, a couple city teams I thought have done their thing, HFL as well. And he goes, nah, you missing the big one, UPrep. He said, you should have seen what they did to McQuaid last Friday night. He said that those guys look explosive. He said, I don't know who they lost from last year, but whoever they brought in this year has gotten the job done. Noah Hill, once again, lighting up the box score, having a day. That game was interesting because they got down 7-0 quick. And then first half scored outscored the Knights 22-3 the rest of the half. UPrep ain't nothing to mess with, man. I mean, like as we talked about ad nauseum before, Class AA has some heavy hitters. I don't know if they separated themselves just yet, but they clearly have put their name in their conversation, and they belong with that strong 5 or 6 that we've alluded to.
Yeah, and you mentioned this guy coming up with you. Oh, I don't know what they lost last year. They lost a ton. They lost to who's who's. They lost an all-greater Rochester, all-star team. They lost Clyde Davis Jr. They lost. The names are escaping me now.
They lost the big boy. They lost
Gerard Watkins. They lost Rakim Chenier. They lost a ton off of that team last year, and they reloaded Chris Jean with 3 touchdowns in that game. He was our Section 5 Player of the Week on Monday. So yeah, UPrep is certainly reloaded very fast, of course. They've got Aquinas coming up on the schedule this week. So if you beat, Victor McQuaid Aquinas, like we said, you're not going to crown anybody after 3 weeks, but, they're sitting atop the mountain, certainly, if they can get this done this weekend.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we were all interested with the classification jumps, Hilton coming down, UPrep going up. I'm sure there's a couple others, Spencerport as well. Don't look like they has been phased one iota with that jump. So we'll see how other teams can match their energy, or UPrep is just that far ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, and this isn't a conversation for today. Maybe it's going to conversations to be had down the line. But if we get 2 or 3 years down the road and it's still McQuaid, Aquinas, UPrep, all at the top of Section 5, 3 non-public schools, there's going to be some discussions. People are going to be saying some things. This isn't saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying if these first 2 weeks are any indication, we're going to have some fun conversations down the line about how we deal with these, the public-private. It was always a thing with Aquinas, and then McQuaid started to get really good, and now if UPrep's getting really good, just watch out for those conversations. I'll just say that.
The message
Carl,
board.
What was that, Carl?
The message boards will be hot.
Exactly. Carl, what else kind of stood out to you last week, and maybe some things you saw from football so far, this year in Section 5?
Well, what stood out to me is my game of the week. I'm gonna be respectful here, but HFL did their thing. Wayne was probably the third team out of them, Batavia and HFL, a year ago, and they lost Batavia in week 1, and we're like, oh, but that game was close throughout the first 3 quarters. Okay, We'll see how they do this week against HFL. That game was never close. HFL did their thing. By the time we got there, I believe it was 35 rip or 36, one of the two. It was a 5-score game at that point. Thankfully, they gave me one last touchdown to get into a highlight so we can make it all nice and tidy. But HFL, man, I gotta give them their kudos. Matt Meacham, the junior quarterback, threw not 1, 2, or 3, but 4 tuds. So shout out to my guy for doing that. That got to be somewhere like a school record over there for the Cougars. I doubt y'all throwing for 5 or 6, so he probably
they've been running it up lately. So that record might have been set the last 2 years. So they can put up some points in a hurry. They've done that over the years, that's for sure.
Yeah, and my last putting the bow on that one, 92-7. That's the score of the first 2 weeks. So clearly, I know that they haven't played Batavia or Monroe yet. But HFL, they coming for the Section 5 crown again. They're coming for it.
Yeah, we talked about that Wayne and Batavia game as, who knows what it was. We're not sure. It's week 1. Batavia, they lost some guys. Wayne, they lost Mason Blankenberg. So, it's a tough early measuring stick for sure. We haven't seen that yet. But the thing that I want to mention also is that, the team that they play next week is the team I'm going to kind of spotlight here. It's the Palmac Red Raiders, 2-0 so far on the season. I got to see them play Newark Marion this past Friday. Devin McCoy had a monster game, just an absurd game. 27 carries for 208 yards and 5 touchdowns for the young man. They ended up with the win 47-30, beating down Newark Marion, and they just looked like a solid team. They got the ball, they can run the ball well. They were also able to throw the ball a little bit. They had an insane one-handed catch, which we got to feature on Football Frenzy. They're going to play HFL this weekend on Saturday. They're going to host them, so that's going to be a nice test, trying to figure out who is who in that Class B bracket. The teams that Palmac have played so far, it's not at that top tier of Class B yet. It's Newark, it's Dansville, Waco. You got to see them as well, but maybe a sleeper, maybe contender. But if you can shorten that game, especially against an explosive offense, run the ball, get the clock moving, it could be an interesting game this Saturday.
McCoy runs hard. I know the first week I was there, and I remember the highlight where the kids were literally holding onto his jersey. That's how hard my guy was running. They had no chance of bringing him down any other way. Palmac, if they can do one thing, they can run that ball. They can tote it. So, as long as he's healthy and the offensive line can push some guys around, Palmac can definitely hold their own in that regard.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, you talk about this Class B bracket. You know, Newark or Palmac had to kind of work to beat Newark Marion. In week one, Monroe kind of just, you know, blew the doors off of them. So maybe UPrep isn't, or not UPrep, Palmac isn't quite in that elite tier yet. But, you know, it's going to be an interesting test on Saturday. I also wanted to get the name of the guy with that one-handed catch. It was Jacob. No, it was Keegan Hostry with the one-handed catch. Wanted to get that name right. So good showing from Palmac. And then another thing, you know, you came out and, you know, interviewed them this week. The reign of Rush-Henrietta continues. Another big win against Fairport. I was at that game. You know, they got it done with the defense kind of more. OJ Singletary with a nice pick six in the second half of that game. Only touchdown they scored in the second half of that game. But you went out there to practice this week. What'd you kind of learn talking to the Royal Comets this week?
Yeah, and speaking on that game, being able to speak to Evan Brock, their star do-it-all running back, quarterback Jackson Copper is only a sophomore, by the way, and then their head coach. And I talked to him about the game. I'm like, you guys have won two different ways so far. You had a crazy comeback win late in the game, and then also jumped out to a huge lead and just, you know, kind of kept Fairport at bay. And he goes, yeah, we kind of let our foot off the gas in that game. We got to learn how to finish teams and play games in that regard. But he still was impressed with how his guys pull out a win, because it's not easy winning no matter who you're up against. But I was able to speak to Evan Brock, and the kid is completely humble. I said, yo, like, I'm going to read off your stat line to you, and you tell me what your reaction is. And this kid goes, yeah, I got to go offensive line. And I'm just like, bucko, you probably do have a great offensive line, but some of those highlights that have nothing to do about the five guys in front of you. So
you're already past them.
Right. You're 10, 15 yards down the field. You alluded to it earlier. He was the quarterback on last year's team, and coach honestly had no idea he would be this good, because they, you know, because of how football and the safety stuff is now, can't really scrimmage like you used to in the preseason and all that. So they had no idea what type of running back he would be. They were just like, hey, we're just going to hope that this kid's good. They found out week one that he is pretty darn good. He said they have 28 seniors, which is an absurd amount for a team. So they're a senior Latin team, and just being able to talk to those guys, they don't feel like there's any Cinderella run. They're just taking it one game at a time, and they feel like they belong. And as long as you got Evan Brock on your team, you're going to belong with just about anybody.
I will say one thing about Evan Brock. I don't know if I can trust him, because it was the third quarter of that game. You know, we were midway through the quarter. I was getting some, like, you know, an establishing shot. Bishai was commenting on the angle. I was like, hey, you got any more touchdowns left for me? You know, he had 2 in the first half. I wasn't able to be there. I'm like, you got any more for me? He's like, I got you. Just watch this. Didn't score a touchdown the rest of the game. So I'll just say, I don't know if I could trust, you know, he let me down a little bit. He did give me 25 highlights against Pittsford, but he let me down a little bit against Fairport. So I don't know. The jury might still be out on Evan Brock here.
Yeah, no, well, hey, that's your word, not mine. Hey, that's the primary source right there. I got to go with what AJ said, all right? But no, bro, it was awesome to see Evan Brock do that. He's a great kid, especially talking to coach a little bit about how Jaden Scott was their guy in previous years, and now they can go from Scott to a kid like Brock and haven't really lost a beat in that department of their team. So room for the Royal Comets. They have a tough test. Got a test out of Buffalo this week. I'm sure you know a little bit more about St. Francis than I do, but he said they're pretty darn good and they got their hands full.
Yeah, Francis is a really good team from the Buffalo area, of course. Very close to where I grew up over there in Hamburg. So they produce a lot of great players. Traditionally, a very strong team. So they're definitely going to have their work cut out for them in that one. We're going to move on to a little football on the soccer side of things. We finally had our first state rankings come out of the fall season, boys soccer only. So far been released, but we've got some interesting teams, popping up. We'll start off with Class AA, the Fairport Red Raiders at number 2 in the entire state of New York with a 4-0 record when the rankings were published. Now at 5-0. They've done their work for them. They beat Victor 4-1, Aquinas 4-2, Hilton 2-0, Brighton 5-1, and then Rush-Henrietta by a score of 4-0. So Fairport's been getting it done so far. Penfield is also, they are 8th in the state rankings with a 3-0 record when these things were published. I believe Penfield picked up a loss to Hilton, but those two teams are actually going to play this evening on Thursday night. So that'll be a good test for both of those teams. In Class A, we've got Wayne at 4th in the state. We've also got Greece Arcadia at number 10 in the state right now. And Carl, you got the chance to see Arcadia just a couple days ago here.
Low scoring affair. 1-0 game where they took down Irondequoit, who was also in the state rankings. To get the names right for the kids, because it was the one highlight of the game. Key Boy Soy free kick. Put it right next to the net for Ethan Cesario, and that was the only score of the contest. It wasn't a lot of action, man. It wasn't like really a lot of like shots on goal or anything. Both teams' defenses were really strong. If I'm not mistaken, Arcadia has 3 shutouts on the year at that, I believe, at the time of that game. So clearly the defense is very stout. They don't really allow much on that end. So their ranking of 10th in the state, I guess, really holds weight because that defense is strong, and it showed up against Irondequoit as well.
And then Wayne, as we mentioned, in the number 4 spot, they are 5-0 on the season. They've allowed just 1 goal this year in those 5 games, and they've beaten some pretty good competition. They beat HFL, they beat Schrader, so a good test there, 2-0. So Wayne's been getting it done as well. And then moving down on the state rankings, we haven't had a chance to see any of these teams, but Livonia, the top team in Section 5, they were 3-0 when the rankings were published. And then in Class C, we've got the Avon Braves, number 1 in the state right now, in Class C in the state of New York. Taking a look at their schedule here so far, they are 5-0 on the season. They've got they started off with a 9-0 win against Bloomfield. They beat Letchworth Warsaw 6-1. They beat Bath Haverling, who Bath Haverling, I believe they went all the way to the state semifinals, state championship game last year. I believe that was that whole thing where they had I think AJ Brock. It might have been Brock. I don't know if I'm just saying Brock. AJ, the kid who played both sports. So that's a great win for them as well. I'm sure that's probably one of the main reasons why they got that ranking so high. But then they beat Calmom and Leroy 2-0 each. So Avon, maybe we'll have to get out there's some Class C soccer in the near future.
I mean, they got some guys, get some characters too. I remember from the sectional final basketball game, those kids was talking cash. I love their energy. I love how passionate they are about their sports. So if that carries any carryover from some of the kids who play basketball to soccer, I would love to get out there and catch a game.
Yeah, right now for Avon, Lee Hartke leading the way with 7 goals, 3 assists. And then the guy in net doing all the stuff, getting those shutouts, Christopher Kashork. So good start for Avon. And so some good starts from and then in Class D, you got Keshequa 6th in the state, and then HAC also 10th in the state. So we got some strong heavy hitters here in soccer so far. That's on the boys' side. On the girls' side, no state rankings yet, but I do want to highlight a team I got a chance to get a hold of this past week, Churchville-Chili. We talked before about Schrader tying Spencerport. Obviously Spencerport is Spencerport. Churchville-Chili beat them, got their first win over the Rangers, the first team to beat them in 40 Section 5 games. They had a 40-game unbeaten streak. That was Spencerport. Churchville-Chili knocked them off. I got the chance to see them play Hilton on Monday. They beat them 1-0, and they're a strong defensive team. Emily McCain has been doing great things for them in net. She had 16 saves against Spencerport in that 3-2 victory over them. She had 10 saves over Hilton, 8 saves over Gates-Chili. I will say one thing. The definition of a save, I don't know what we're going with here for the scorekeeper, because I did not peg her down for 10 saves in that Hilton game. So we'll see how many of that, if we watch the tape, I don't know how many of those 16 saves against Spencerport were like legitimate saves. There's some differences between saves and corralling the ball, but no matter what she's doing, they're relying on her. She's not letting the ball in the net. And then scoring wise, Amelia Breton, 5 goals, 0 assists. And then Jenna Northup, 3 goals, 1 assist. So Churchville-Chili, they've been strong contenders recently in the past few years, but this, who knows? Maybe it's their year.
Is the reign of Spencerport over? Is that what we're proclaiming right now? Is this what we're saying?
We're not saying that just yet. I was talking to Paulie G at the game on Monday. Paul Gothard for Picking Splinters. If you didn't know, we might be the only ones who call him Paulie G, so I will just say that. But he mentioned, he looked back at that, those losses Spencerport went on. I think they might have had, it was either 2 in a row or they lost 2 and then they won a loss or tied another one. So they had a little slump. And then they went all the way to the state championship game or something like that. So Spencerport, they've done this before. But yeah, Churchville-Chili, the Saints. How about them apples?
I love to see that. I love to see that. Yesterday, I was able to catch some girls action. Penfield volleyball. I know that we talked about Victor and how they maybe a little bit of a rebuilding year, and the team that they took down in the sectional championship last year. Thrilling match. Introduced me to really Section 5 sports a little bit. Penfield. And yesterday, our sports director Thad Brown goes, yeah, Thad's daughter is now playing volleyball, so he's all in tune with the scene. I'm like, yo, send me to a game. And he goes, yeah, go out to Penfield Brighton. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I know Penfield legit. He said Brighton was unbeaten. I'm like, all right, bet. Undefeated team's cool. Brighton could be good. I think they are. They're undefeated for a reason. But Penfield is they're legit. They're led by Nicole Bell. We all remember her from last year. Explosive hitter on the outside. I mean, if she got the right setup, it was an automatic point for the Patriots. Anna Gutman also did their job. She had a nice kill. It was one of the highlights that I showed. Penfield, they're legit, man. I mean, they haven't dropped a set all year. I couldn't find the exact amount of games they played this year because Section5.org only had listed down for 4, but then Max Preps has them in the tournament that we talked about earlier. So I have no idea how many games they've won. I just know that they're really darn good and they haven't lost yet. All right, folks. So if you need a Section 5 team volleyball to watch out and they're legit, Penfield Patriots, man, that's what I got for you.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Penfield term that we talked a little bit about last week. The team that they beat in that championship game was Shenendehowa. Once again, I believe I'm saying that correctly. You talk about those Max Prep rankings. Right now those Max Prep rankings are just computer BCS yada yada. They can't tell you the whole picture. They tell you a little bit of the picture. Right now, Penfield's number 2 based on these rankings, and Shenendehowa is number 1, and Penfield beat them. So I don't know if Shenendehowa is the number 1 team in the state or 2 or 3, but they're not bad, and they swept them in that championship game. So I don't know if it's too early to say this, but if we're gonna, if you're making your futures bet on the Section 5 high school huddle, gambling sports book, if you had to put one future on a Section 5 team to win it all, it might be the Penfield girls volleyball team.
Yeah, I mean, my memory's a little hazy, and I know Victor was cold last year. We all saw with our own 2 eyes, but the Penfield clearly wasn't too far off.
That was the quasi state championship game. That was Penfield almost winning, and then Victor storming back on match point. So they were essentially the runners up last year, and this year they might be the favorites. So yeah, Penfield Patriots, certainly a team to keep an eye on. We are accepting those. Well, actually, we're not accepting bets on Penfield. We're going to take the bets on all the other teams. Penfield is off the market. We don't know what to set their line as. Let's take a look at the games we got coming up this weekend. We got a really, usually these games to watch, it's pretty cut and dry. These teams are the good, these teams. We got a lot of matchups on the slate this year or this week that we're not even going to talk about in this segment. Carl, what's your game that you've got your eyes on this weekend for high school football here?
I'm going with Victor taking the trip out to Pittsford to take on the Panthers. Both teams suffered a week 1 loss that maybe they feel they should have won. I know Victor was up on UPrep, and the Griffins ended up coming back. We talked about Pittsford and RH, that battle with the World Commons coming out on top. Both teams peered it up last week, so now both teams are sitting at 1-1. I guess what team is going to continue their trajectory upwards? I talked to Primetime a little bit last week, and they said that Jackson Green show was back in action last week. So we'll see if Jackson Green can continue to ascending upwards, and Victor with that physical ball that they play, can they, continue that style of ball as well?
Yeah, this is kind of maybe the battle to figure out what team can get into that number 1 tier, who's going to be in that second. Because if you think about, the rankings, obviously every team makes the playoffs. So, we're not worried about, not making the playoffs here. But if you've got McQuaid, UPrep, and Aquinas, who still winless on the season, but we expect Aquinas to come back to storm. You've only got one more team left to get that home playoff game in the first week, and you've got Rush-Henrietta that week in that mix, and you've obviously got Victor and Pittsford. So if you lose this game, whoever loses this game, it's going to be a long battle ahead of you to try and earn that home playoff game. It's going to be a long battle ahead of you to get that 3rd spot to, maybe avoid whoever's at the top, however things shake out. So certainly some early playoff implications coming at our heads this week. And then I've got a game more just for the rivalry aspect. We've got Eastridge, we've got Irondequoit battling it out. They're both at 1-1 on this season. Both some frisky teams here in Class A. Eastridge, they played that Thursday game. They beat Brockport. They were down 23-8 at the half. They stormed all the way back. Brennan Russo had 3 touchdowns at quarterback. Cordell Young had an interception. Brockport was driving, trying to take the lead. Eastridge ended up getting the victory there. So a fun game for Eastridge. They're able to get the win. And then Irondequoit, Carl got this chance to see them week 1 when they took on Wilson. Makai Christensen had 2 touchdowns in that game. Lemaire Smith had 2 touchdowns in that game. IQ kind of got beat up by East last week, but I think this is going to be a fun, pretty evenly matched game between Eastridge and Irondequoit with, the pride and the key to the city on the line.
I was about to say the key to the city is definitely the bragging rights for this one. Obviously, Brockport, they're feisty considering they came back, and then IQ has a very, very large quarterback. I forget the name. The name's escaping me, but the kid is massive and he runs hard. He's physical. So both teams, it's gonna be the battle of the wits in that regard. I can't wait. IQ on the line. Let's go, city. Let's go.
Yes, we're gonna see if I know. Once I see this Eastridge quarterback's name or that Irondequoit quarterback's name, it's gonna hit me. Just like that one defender did to him, Eric Barr.
Eric Barr, huge kid. Kudos, shout out to Mr. Barr. Big, massive kid. He walked past me like going into halftime. I'm like, oh, he's bigger than what I thought he was. Like, big dude. You know how they say when you're younger, put the big, best athlete at quarterback and let him do his thing. That's what IQ did, and he's a phenomenal athlete in his own right.
Yeah, I wish I could pull up the name on this guy. Oh yeah, this was the dude who hit him. Elamine Ortiz Price. We just got to give some shout out to that hit from Wilson early college, and they list him at 5'7", 137. He's a sophomore. We kind of talked about this before. It was interesting that they gave him the 137. Usually you don't. You go that specific when he's 6'4", 262. Usually try and bump up the little guy, but that was one heck of a hit. That made the highlight. Not often just good hits get the highlights, but that one did. Man,
shout out to man. Look, I wish that we knew his height and weight before he went on air, as we talked about before off air, because that was a nice dude. Like we said, Eric Barr, not no little dude, y'all, and he lowered his pass too. So, my man said he don't fear no man. So shout out to Mr. Ortiz in that one.
There we go. Should be a great weekend of high school football action. Like we mentioned before, we didn't even get to we talked about early, of course. We've got Aquinas and UPrep again. We've got that HFL Palmac that Palmac game coming up too. So today, as we record this on Thursday, check the box score. We've got Batavia and Monroe, another battle of who's who in Class B. So we got a lot of teams coming at your way. Only way you're going to get caught up on it here on the High School Huddle and on News 8 and RochesterFirst.com. We got our football frenzies coming for you Friday and Saturday. We got another good slate of Saturday games, second week in a row. If there's one thing this rough shortage is kind of doing, it is giving us some games on Saturday for you. So we've got all that coming up for you on News 8 and RochesterFirst.com. It is now time to break the High School Huddle. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones. Thank you very much for listening. Give us some likes, comments, ratings, subscribes. Maybe give us some questions. Got any questions for us? I was thinking one of these times we should open up the mailbag. Will people, people send their letters? We'll see, but maybe that comes in the future. Let us know if you want a mailbag day. But for Carl Jones, I'm AJ Feldman. Enjoy your high school football weekend. Enjoy your Monday night's home opener for the Buffalo Bills playing against the Tennessee Titans. We didn't talk about them. They looked pretty good in week 1. But that is all for us on the High School Huddle. Thank you for watching. We'll see you.